And I wonder if anyone has really thought through the consequences. What happened in Pittsburgh is really very, very disturbing, because it's like serving notice to the American people that the age of peaceful protest is over. If you go to a peaceful demonstration, you risk losing your hearing from this LRAD, which is a monster. I mean, you know, in 1984, Orwell didn't have the imagination to foresee some of the things that we now have in place here. And, you know, I have very mainstream friends who are people who never protested in their lives, but are extremely upset that this kind of, as you say, it's big business. Mm-hmm. And you know, if people can't protest peacefully, well, I don't want to advise them what to do, but I would personally prefer that people protested peacefully.
Absolutely.
Than be driven to other forms of protest, because peaceful protest is now past history in this country.
Yeah, and I went down. I actually covered on the ground the Pittsburgh G20. I was there. They locked down all of downtown Pittsburgh. It was absolutely impossible to get there. They had Humvees with military forces. The National Guard came in. Mm-hmm. It was a $19 million project. I had covered every single one of the quote-unquote protests or out-of-control riots, and I had not seen the force that they used, just the amount of force ever, what they used on Friday night after the G20. You know, it was less than, I don't know if you've seen the videos yet, but there were less than 200 peaceful protesters in Schenley Plaza.
Right.
Okay.
I have seen some of them.
Yeah.
All the ones I've seen, the camera ends up sort of going crazy and photographing this.
Because you're running
over their lives.
Yeah. You know, I don't want to.
Yeah. You know,
yeah. You don't want a rubber bullet in the eye. You lose your hearing. You know, people are getting hit with tear gas canisters and LRAD weapons. And I was threatened with arrest several times. I was grabbed by one of the riot police. I'm the only person there. Literally, the protesters are a couple hundred feet away from me, and all I'm doing is filming the line of military police that are out there, and it's just unbelievable. You can't be here. I get charged by one. I get grabbed by another. They reach for the plastic cuffs. And then Rob Dew, who you've been talking with all morning, he was actually detained. Now they
showed them the press pass, and they said no, and detained him anyway.
And when we were calling to try to get these guys out, they said, no, there's a different process for protesters. Now, this is the first time in this country that they detained over 100 peaceful protesters, took their digital fingerprints, and didn't charge them with anything. It used to be in this country, you had to be charged with a crime, they would take your fingerprints, but if you were found innocent of that crime, you got that information back. These people weren't charged with anything.
Right.
It's unbelievable. They're obviously databasing the dissidents, you know, to try to quelch us from using our free speech. Like you said,
it's a deterrent thing. They want to say to people, you go out and be part of a peaceful protest, and you don't know what's going to happen to you, so stay away. And that's and I just don't see any opposition to it. And I didn't see, you know, the mainstream media are writing themselves into the history books by their refusal to face these big new issues that are coming up in this country.
Absolutely. And you've been one who was very critical of the Bush administration. You've gone beyond the left and right paradigm. You know that this is, you know, one control group, one establishment. So you've been pretty critical of the Obama administration as well. I want to get into how they really advanced the program, how they've advanced continuity of government, how they've advanced, you know, presidential privileges, and how, you know, this is, and these are executive orders. This is not a government for and by the people anymore. We really don't have the system of checks and balances that this country was found on. That's why we have the three different branches of government. And that's why, you know, Congress is supposed to have oversight. We don't see that anymore in this country.
Right. I think there's a crucial issue, which is, I hope everybody listening to this program knows that for 20 years, Rumsfeld and Cheney were planning something called continuity of government measures. Originally, this was a quite legitimate activity. What happens if there's an atomic attack and Washington is hit by a nuclear weapon and we are decapitated. We don't have a government anymore. But Cheney and Rumsfeld changed it so it was planning to deal with any emergency, and they got an executive order passed under Reagan which redefined The purpose of COG was to deal with any emergency. And the amazing thing is these two people went on planning for, in effect, the suspension of the American Constitution. That's what it's been called. When neither of them were in the government.
But they were in the continuity of government.
They were in this special thing that was set up under Reagan back in 1981 by a secret order. And there's a biography of Rumsfeld that suggests that Clinton didn't even know what was going on. And the people who were planning it, originally they were Democrats and Republicans, but in the 90s they were all Republicans.
Hold that thought. We're going to be back right after this. I do cover a lot of this in my film Fabled Enemies, the revamping of the continuity of government or shadow government program. Please check it out. It's The Alex Jones Show. I am Jason Bermas sitting in. We'll be back with Peter Dale Scott after this.
Do you understand how dark it is? How far down the line we are? How late it is?
We are back. It's The Alex Jones Show. I am Jason Bermas sitting in. Joining us in studio for PrisonPlanet.tv members is Peter Dale Scott. And we were just talking about this continuity of government program, which is the shadow government. Tell us how this integrates into the new Obama administration.
Continuity of government, COG, is a concept that every American should know about because it is a plan for, it's supposed to be temporary suspension of the Constitution. And as I wrote in my book, The Road to 9/11, it was instituted for the first time on the morning, before 10 o'clock on the morning of September the 11th, 2001, in response to these attacks. Now, that might have been an understandable response to an attack which they still didn't know the limits of, but that was codified into the declaration of a state of emergency on 3 days later, on September the 14th. And there is a law which says that these things have to be renewed. And so Bush renewed it as late as the fall of 2008. And then I and another, Dan Hamburg, a former congressman, we started a campaign that Obama should end this once and for all, and he had let us down. He renewed it just this last month. He's renewed it again. And this is a plan, we don't even know what it means. Congressman DeFazio, back in 2007, when he saw that Bush had, again, he was on the Homeland Security Committee, and he saw that there were certain secret orders, and he was on the oversight subcommittee that should have seen those orders, so he asked to see them. He was told that he didn't have the clearance to see them, because COG has its own clearances. This is why I think the report, there are certain things, the 9/11 report, certain things it just can't talk about. They can't find the certain orders because they were done at a higher level of clearance than they had to in order to write the report. Well, his whole committee wasn't able to see them, and but there's another part of the law, and I feel like a voice in the wilderness here because nobody's picked up on this, but it's right there in the law that if a state of emergency is declared, Congress must review it within 6 months and either ratify the state of emergency or close it down. So, as I say, this ex-congressman Dan Hamburg and I said, well, Congress, you've had 8 years now and you're supposed to do it in 6 months. So for heaven's sakes, do it. And we tried to mobilize a campaign to get everyone to write to their congressman. And one congressman wrote back and said, well, that provision of the law is no longer operative because it has been overridden by, guess what, continuity of government. Well, this is the whole issue of, as you said, 3 branches of government and checks and balances. If a small group of people, 2 of whom are not even in the government, can set up a new set of rules which are brought in under the shadow of this attack on September the 11th, and Congress is told that they can't review it when the law says that they must review it, we have a disturbing situation. And when nobody in the media I say there's the mainstream media. Now we have the mainstream internet, too. And then we have people like you and me. The mainstream internet has not picked up on this, but this whole thing should be looked at, and Congress should, first of all, should find out what secret rules are being put in. I mean, somebody in Congress should have the right to do that. We have an intelligence committee that can look at what the CIA is doing. I would have thought that Homeland Security would be the people who could see what are the secret rules to deal with Homeland Security. This is, I think, a kind of line in the sand whether we're going to go on having a tripartite constitutional frame of government or not.